Hello and welcome to the weekend Warhammer wrap-up. This is episode 4. This is where I go over the 4-1 and 5-0 results for the weekend and pick out a few lists to talk in a little more detail. Joining me today is a special guest. You heard them last week. Introduce yourself.
I'm Gigi. Like I said last week, I'm a player in the Australian Age of Sigmar scene, primarily Gloomspite Gits, little bit of Daughters of Cain.
Okay, let's go. So going through it, here are the 4-1 and 5-0 results. Number 1 for the second week in a row is Sylvaneth, with 6 4-1s and 2 5-0s. Then you've got Lumineth below them, followed by Daughters of Cain. Slaves to Darkness with a surprisingly strong week here. Ossiarch Bone Reapers, Seraphon. Then we've got Blades of Khorne, Skaven, and Soulblight, all with the same amount of results. Below them is Stormcast, Zinch, Hellsmiths, Flesh-Eater Quartz, and Ogres. Below that, Iron Jaws, Idoneth, KO, Hedonites, Maggotkin, Gits, and Sons. Just a quick bit of analysis, I guess. All the usual suspects are here. Sylvaneth, Lumineth, Daughters of Cain being the top 3 is not surprising. They're both recent books that are incredibly strong. Ossiarch Bone Reapers being up there, another new book that people are having some success with. And then also you've got Zinch up here. Not as high as I would expect, but I think Zinch is a army that is very technical to play and can punish mistakes very hard. And I think if you're a really good player that can play them to the highest ability, then they'll feel almost unbeatable, but maybe that's a little hard to unlock. Other than that, this is a pretty wide spread of factions. There aren't many factions that aren't represented in this group here. Yeah. Have you got any takes?
Shout out Seraphon.
Yeah,
that's really high. That also shout outs to Slave, two armies that have been doing mid to terribly over the last few months. Just back at it again. I know both of them got pretty decent points drops last battle scroll. Obviously, Seraphon had its most meta list taken out back and killed, though it seems to still be playable. But yeah, I'd be interested to see. I'm not sure what's going on in Slaves. I don't know if it's a Dark Oath thing or like a Chosen thing or should have a look after this is over to see what people are running.
Yeah, so Slaves, I had a quick look at it. There was one Dark Oath list and a lot of Archaon. It seems Archaon is still very popular within Slaves.
Great.
Archaon and Knights. There was a list running 4 MSU squads of Varangard. But a lot of Archaon, right? And he's really strong in his ability to guarantee you the double turn, or at least if you don't get the double turn, you'll at least know that you're not getting it at a point in which you can then prepare your whole turn around it, while also being a reasonably strong combat monster and everything else that Archaon does. But let's move on. So these are the power picks, the strong lists, the meta lists. First, we got a Daughters of Cain list here. It's in the Coven of Blood battle formation. It's got a Slaughter Queen and Cauldron of Blood with a Witch Brew and Hand of Cain, 2 reinforced units of Blood Hags, reinforced Sisters of Slaughter, a Bloodrack Shrine with reinforced Blood Sisters, Heartrenders, and the Scourge of Garan Kruthessa. And then also your faction train in here. Restless Energy and Wrathful Cycles as battle tactic cards. I'll let Gigi take the lead on this one as our resident DOK player.
I mean, you really just can't go wrong with the girls right now. Like, pretty much, I've seen pretty much that entire book represented in 4150 lists at this point. This list is pretty typical. There's a few patterns that you can sort of point out that are present in this list. Kruthessa is very, very popular, both her normal version and her soggy version. I think mostly just due to the fact that she is a 2-cast priest, and 2-cast priests are more efficient than 2 1-cast priests at getting spells off. or Perezov, sorry. Um, then usually lists either have two cauldrons or cauldron adjacent things, so the Bloodwrack Shrine, um, or they have Marathi, one or the other. This list has opted for the two cauldrons. I've seen a lot of lists with Marathi and a cauldron, or Marathi and Krithesa as well. But like, yeah, you really can just run anything. Like, it's not that restrictive. Everything seems to have a place. Um, I think the only one thing that we're seeing a little bit underrepresented is witch elves, and I think that's just because they really do not have a place in the book anymore. Because blood hags are more efficient for hitting things, sisters of slaughter are more efficient chaff, so they sort of just end up in this weird limbo where they don't really have a job anymore, other than being a little bit cheaper than blood hags. If we see blood hags go up, I could see the era of the witch elf coming back because they're not realistically that much worse, but for now, I think that's the way of it.
Yeah. Daughters of Cain is an army that hits incredibly hard, and that's what it does.
Yeah,
There's a level of output in Daughters of Cain that is almost unheard of. It feels kind of wrong when you play against it, but they are just really strong at the minute. We'll go over a couple of things. So we've got the blood rights and the blessings. So blood rights and blessings they're not one and the same, but they're linked. So blood rights are a thing that you'll complete during the game by doing this list of challenges, I guess, quests. And then if you complete a blood right in a turn, at the end of your turn or end of any turn, you'll get to pick a blessing. And the blessings are the buffs that make your army tick, right? They things like +1 to hit or +1 to wound. That one being really important as an elf army that wounds on 4s. That really helps. But almost all of those abilities are really, really strong. And so it's the way that as your army starts killing things and starts doing damage, which is what it wants to do, it then becomes even stronger and even better at doing damage and killing things, and it snowballs. I think the first blessing is the one you really want to stop, and the one the DOK player really wants to get, because if you can delay that first blessing and like the first blood right to get that first blessing, then you'll slow the DOK player down, and you might have enough time to then catch back up or not let the snowball start going down the hill. Have you got anything to say about the blessings?
yeah, you pretty much hit it on the head where like both playing as and playing against DOK is just a lesson in how important tempo is in Age of Sigmar in general, but especially in this matchup. Because as a DOK player, it can be very, very hard to find the opening to get that first blood right without, throwing away a unit, like a cheap anointed unit or something like that. Like it requires a lot of planning to like sort of find the weak point in which you can score that first blessing. However, just like once you've got one or two of them, the game just everything just feels like it's flowing in your favor, and you just don't you're not under nearly as much pressure as you normally are in a like this kind of game. You're just like sort of everything you touch will just die essentially, and you still need to be smart about positioning and things. Your army is incredibly squishy. If you're ever getting swung at and weren't expecting it can just lose you the game kind of thing, because pretty much like everything in that army dies to a Swift Breeze except maybe Marathi, and even then she dies to a Swift Breeze considering how expensive she is. But yeah, and as far as blessings orders go, +1 to wound is like almost automatically the first one, and then after that you have a lot more flexibility. I usually do the +1 to hit after that, but depending on sort of what my opponent is running and what the battle plan is, +3 inches move is really, really solid. Same with -1 to hit and shooting and the 5 at ward. All really solid. Just a really solid army. It's super fun to play as well. Like if you are thinking about getting into DOK, I would highly recommend it. And not just because they're powerful, because they are really, really fun.
Yeah, a couple things I'll hit on here that I haven't put in the slides, but that I wanted to talk about. One is the battle formation, which if all the models in a unit are contesting an objective, they can't be targeted by shooting attacks. One of DOK's big weaknesses is shooting. as we've alluded to, DOK is incredibly squishy. Bad saves, low wound counts means they can just die. And shooting is an effective way of doing that, right? You're not putting yourself in any danger as the opponent shooting at them. So being able to avoid shooting really helps DOK. And then also the faction terrain allows you to possibly swap your blessings around. So if there is a blessing that you wanted a little more, you can take that one and then swap it to something else. If there's one that's going to be more useful at a particular point in the game, you can then swap stuff around, which is really cool and interesting. So yeah, going on to that, we've got the Blood Hag War Scroll. I picked this one because there was a lot of them in the list that we just looked at. They hit very hard, right? You've got 3 attacks each, 3s and 4s, round 1 damage 1, which doesn't paint the full picture. DOK has a plethora of different offensive buffs they can hand out. They also get some stuff when they're next to the cauldrons, and then also if they destroy enemy units, they can get extra blessings, which can help get that snowball going a little faster. Anything to say about Blood Hags?
Yeah, so Blood Hags are there's pretty much 2 hammer units in DOK. There are Blood Hags, which are elves with spears, and then there are Blood Sisters, which are sort of like Medusas with spears, also coincidentally. And the you'll see a lot of lists. I don't remember if this list had any Blood Sisters in it, but you'll see a lot of lists that will have 20 Blood Hags, 10 Blood Sisters. Or
Yeah, this
2
list had
units. Yeah, this list does have 10 Blood Sisters in it. So
yeah,
and the reason for that is that Blood Hags are like do a lot of damage as long as you can get buffs off on them, and because pretty much like there are so many buffs in that spell lore and so many buffs in that prayer lore, you layer it all onto them. They've got that juicy 3 attacks characteristic that you just get to juice to high heavens, send them off on something, and they will pretty much delete everything in the game. Blood Sisters don't do as much damage when they're buffed. However, they are a lot better off the bat raw. They have crit mortals on their war scroll. They have less attacks, and they do a little bit. Do they do damage 2 base? I don't remember.
Yeah,
they do damage 2 base. However, just because there's 5 of them, like usually if something has a similar amount of attacks but half as many models, it's obviously going to be quite a little bit less effective when you start layering those buffs on there. So often what you'll see is people take a unit of Blood Hags and a unit of Blood Sisters, and this is to sort of stagger which unit is acting as the hammer in any given turn, because you can start with your Blood Sisters, kill something that you're certain your Blood Sisters can kill, then that gives you enough time to get your prayer points, get your spells off, cast them on the blood hags, send the Blood Hags out, kill the thing you're really scared of, and then you can sort of alternate and keep one of them like while you're getting your Blood Hags back into fighting order, or alternatively getting them under those blood rights. The Blood Hags are just reliable. Or the Blood Sisters, sorry, are just reliable. They're just doing the thing, and they don't need your help to do it. They just do it yourself or themselves. While Blood Hags need that little bit of an extra push in order to really, really like shine.
Yeah, that's Daughters of Cain, and there's a lot of other stuff in that list. We didn't really talk about the Cauldron of Blood or the Blood Rack Shrine, which is also very strong, but this is just an overview of what Daughters of Cain can do. It's incredibly strong. Moving on, we've got Lumineth Realm Lords. This is the faction that I'm more familiar with. It's running the war host of Duality Battle Formation, the Lore of the Awakened Realms. It's got Lyrior, the Light of Eltharion, Reinforced Sentinels, 2 units of Reinforced Dawn Riders, a Scanarian Lightner with the Silver Wand and the Acolyte of the Runes, a unit of Wardens, and a unit of Riverblades. Lumineth is an incredibly strong book in the way that it's got a lot of options and a lot of tools and a lot of things that it can do. So it can keep you in the game for quite a while because you've always got some trick or something that you can pull out to try and keep you in it. This list is running a more aggressive Alpha Strike version of the list, and I'll go through a little bit of that in a second with Lyrior and the way that he combos with your battle formation in War Host of Duality. You've got your Dawn Riders as well that are part of that whole piece. Sentinels are one of the best shooting units in the game, in my opinion. I think they're really strong and just really good. They've got long range, they do consistent damage, and yeah, they're just great. And the Enlightener is a great caster, right? It forms the backbone of most lists. I think unless you're taking Alania and Elithor, you're taking an Enlightener. The Silver One gives it +1 to cast on its 2 casts. Acolyte of the Runes allows it to hand out additional runes, which we'll go through the rune system in a second in a little bit of detail. Then you got Wardens and Riverblades just to stand on circles and go do stuff. And Lord of the Awakened Realms is just a solid spell lore as well. Elemental Push allows you to move units a little bit. You've got a 5-up Ward Aura, you got other stuff. It's quite strong. Yeah. Any takes on Lumineth?
Well, considering you can sort of give the perspective of a Lumineth player, I can sort of give the perspective of someone who's played against the new Lumineth book quite a few times. And just like sort of say like the battle formations and the rune system we're about to go over like can be really overwhelming as like an opponent, especially in a GT setting where you're sort of expected to learn your opponent's rules in 10 minutes or so before the game begins. Like you probably won't get it your first try, but the more that you play against this faction, the more you'll sort of understand what it can do, and you can play a little bit more cautiously. The one weakness that you can always take advantage of, regardless of how well you know the Lumineth matchup, is just that the battle scrolls aren't that hot. Like they have a lot of really, really good abilities and really, really strong tricks and things, but at the end of the day, those like the stat lines that are holding the army up are just noticeably worse than a lot of the other armies in the game. So just always remember that like the army is a little bit squishy. It doesn't do as much damage, which means that once you can really start getting on top of what your opponent can do, you can really start to pick it apart.
Yeah. So first, we're going to look at the rune system. This is sort of a graph grid view of it. Basically, at the start of the battle round, the Lumineth player will pick a rune, and they'll depict it on what's known as their battle scripture, just a list of runes that they've picked for the game. And then, depending on which runes they've picked previously, they'll get additional effects. So up the top here, under base, these are the core effects just for picking that rune. And these other effects come into play once you get other runes depicted. These are the enhanced effects. There are some really strong abilities here. The Rune of Wind, -1 to hit rolls, is really great. The -2 to charge from the Rune of the River shuts down slow armies like nothing else and can really help shut off any turn 1 alpha strikes. Like if your opponent really wants to go aggressive, being able to -2 to charge them means they are much less consistent in doing that. The 5-up ward is obviously very good. And so on, so on. Some of these enhanced effects are also really good. Some war scrolls, also Lyrior being one of them, and there's also Severeth and Avlanor that allow you to get specific enhanced effects on certain units, even if you haven't depicted them on your battle scripture. So in this example, in this list, Lyrior can give Venari units the enhanced effects as if you've picked the Rune of Strength, which means you can get either the anti-charge +1 rend or the +4 to move from the Rune of the Wind. But this graph seems very confusing and very overwhelming, but as the game progresses, there'll only be a certain amount of these options that are actually available to your opponent. So you've just got to look at what they've picked previously and then what that could possibly unlock for them later down the line. And there's only so much you can do to play around this because you can't stop it. Your opponent just gets to do it. You'll just have to roll with the punches of what they've picked, essentially. Also, just quickly, Rune of Zenith. You'll need to pick 4 total unique runes. This is not a full-on like tutorial on the rune system. Go read the rules and like take it down in more detail, but this was just a quick overview on it. anything to say on runes?
Um, Yeah, no, you mostly covered it pretty well. I think the one thing I would add is just like if you truly do not have time to study all of these runes as someone who's afraid of playing against Lumineth, which let's be honest, who really does? Um, I would almost recommend like before a game, sort of just looking at the chart and just finding the one that your army would hate the most, if that makes sense. So if you're playing an army that um a destruction army that hits on fours, then you know that the -1 to hit rune is probably more likely to be picked than the others, and you can start building a game plan around the fact that okay, I'm always going to be -1 to hit. How am I going to counteract that? Obviously, like there's a certain amount of rock paper scissors in Age of Sigmar. Like you're not always going to have an option to play around it, and that's part of what makes like Lumineth so powerful is that they have so many abilities that can counter so many different kinds of armies. But always just being aware of what you're like of the fact that that could happen always helps you just like not despair and just sort of think about okay, I'm not going to be able to do reliable damage this game because everything's at -1 to hit. How am I going to outscore my opponent? How am I going to do X, do Y kind of thing, and get that ball rolling on creatively thinking around it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And then going on to that, we've got Larior plus Warhost to Duality. So first we'll talk about Warhost to Duality here, which is a Striker's 1 ability right down here. So it means that when players are alternating picking units to fight, you'll get to pick one after the other. And they can be anywhere on the battlefield. They could be 30 inches apart, and you still pick one, and then the next one will get to fight. It's a key part of how Lumineth has played for quite a while and still plays, as Warhost Duality is almost universally picked as the battle formation. When your army is squishy and kind of easy to kill like Lumineth, having the ability to get multiple activations in before your opponent is what can swing the tides in combat and give you an advantage. And Lyriel here has got this spell that can make himself strike first. And with that, you can then get 4 activations, one after the other. Because you'll get Lyriel activate, then Warhost will trigger and you'll get a second activation. And then this is assuming that it's your turn, by the way. Then you'll get your normal activation and then a unit after it. And so in this list, you've got Lyrior, Light of Eltharion, which can teleport himself into combats, and then the 2 units of Dawn Riders. So they can all fight one after the other for a very potent alpha strike. That's also, in a lot of ways, an alpha pin because these units can be quite tanky depending on the debuffs that you put on them. And then also just, you've sent a lot of stuff, like 60 wounds worth of cavalry plus your heroes, into your opponent's face and told them deal with it, and sometimes your opponent just can't deal with it. So yeah, that's this stuff. You've got any takes on it?
Not really. It's pretty nasty. The whole lack of just how many activations you can get before your opponent even gets to go. It certainly makes up for the sort of poor damage that I sort of mentioned earlier. But ultimately, like I guess that is the silver lining as someone fighting against Lumineth is that Dawn Raiders don't do that much damage compared to the cavalry in the game of similar price. And the heroes are like incredibly hitty, but they're still, foot hero profiles. They're not like 10 chosen or anything. So you can sort of get away with it. Or it's not quite as overwhelming as it might sound on paper, but it's still really, really scary.
Yeah, 100%. So moving on, our next list is the Blades of Khorne list in the Tournament of Skulls battle formation. It's got a Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster with 20 Bloodletters, 2 units of Claws of Karanak, and a unit of Blood Reavers, a Bloodmaster with the Frenzied Taskmaster, and then 3 more reinforced units of Bloodletters for 80 Bloodletters total. Part of this is just Bloodletters are absurdly cheap right now for what they are. 150 points for 10 Bloodletters is kind of ridiculous, but you just overwhelm your opponent with lots of guys that hit pretty hard because you're in Khorne. The Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster can give them +1 attack, which is really strong. We'll get to their profile in a bit. The Bloodmaster can chain activate into them and give them +1 to hit. And then also Frenzy Taskmaster, the artifact that he's holding, allows him to move them d6 inches, which allows you to move them a little faster. And then Tournament of Skulls, your battle formation, while a demon unit is wholly within 12 inches of a mortal unit, they get +1 to wound. It's non-hero for both of those, but that's where your 2 units of Claws of Karanak and the Blood Reavers come in, is that if they're nearby your Bloodletters, then you can get +1 to wound on your Bloodletters, which is really strong. And also, they're just dudes that go move around the board and score you points. You just put an absurd amount of wounds on the table. So yeah, have you got any takes on Khorne?
Not really. This list feels pretty self-explanatory to me, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but it's a lot of crit mortal attacks. Bloodletters have crit mortals. That's it. That's how many 6s can I get out of these fucking dudes?
Yeah, exactly.
But
yeah, and you've got other stuff, prayers and things, but we'll go through it. So this is Blood Tithe. So Blood Tithe, you will generate a Blood Tithe point every time a unit dies, either friendly or enemy. And then at the start of your turn, you can spend Blood Tithe points to unlock abilities. I'm not going to go through all the Blood Tithe abilities here because it's not really super important. You'll unlock them in this sort of tech tree formation. So you get Murderlust for free, and then you'll go down the tree and unlock new things. Basically, that is to say how that interacts with the Blood Drenched ability. Now, this ability changed very drastically in the December Battle Scroll update, where beforehand it required half the total units on the battlefield to have died. Now it activates when you complete a Blood Tithe, and then you'll get to apply Blood Drenched to one of your units. So Blood Drenched will always put this ability that ignores positive modifiers to save rolls. So when you Blood Drench a unit, you can't then all out defense them later or any other sort of save buffs, but they will get an ability. And in this list, it's most likely going to be the +1 to rend for demon units. So it brings your Bloodletters up to rend 2. This changed the way that Khorne played pretty drastically, and part of Khorne's current success is also just massive points cuts have made these lists function because they just have more units now. But this makes your battle traits a lot nicer and a lot more fun to play with. And then moving on to that, we'll just go through Bloodletters quickly. They have 2 attacks each, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1 with crit mortals. And they also get to move 3 inches in any combat phase. And that's in addition to their pile-in. So they get to move a lot, like 6 inches just in the combat phase alone, if they're in combat. And then also you've got decent attacks here, 2 attacks. So like I went through the profile. That could be Rend 2 with your Blood Drenched. It could be 3 attacks with the Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster. You could be on 3s and 2s, 2s and 2s if you all out attack. It's just a potent amount of attacks on a unit that you have so much of. You have so many Bloodletters and you get all this attack from it. Anything to add?
sort of crazy that Cecil's violence ability is a once per turn army.
Yeah.
Like having 80 of those guys just move 3 inches in the combat phase is terrifying. I'm sure there's some really, really scary tech stuff that players who are very skilled with Khorne have done to people. But yeah, it's sort of tempting, honestly. Maybe I should build a Bloodletters spam list.
Yeah, I think Bloodletters are in a really interesting spot. There's also, it's just Khorne's in an interesting spot. You've got cheap, like you can throw away cheap units to get Blood Drenched or Blood Tithe abilities if you want with your Blood Readers and Claws of Karanak. There are other battle formations that do other things for your Bloodletters, but this list specifically does all this. And Also, if you love your bloodletters, Legion of the First Prince and Slaves of Darkness is also another way to run them. So just putting that out there. These are my picks, the fun lists, I guess, but they're all super competitive. We're looking at lists that have gone 4-1 here. But first is an Iron Jaws list. I play Iron Jaws a little bit. This is an Iron Jaws list in Iron Jaws Brawl. It's got Kragnos, 3 units of reinforced Brute Rages with a Morgrunter Gouger, a Megaboss and Maw Crusher with the Amberstone, Whetstone, Madden, and Hulkin Brute, and then 3 units of Scourgeoran Weird Brute Wreckers. It is a list that does what Iron Jaws do. It hits super duper hard and just sends you into next week. Like, Iron Jaws is an army that can be played very techie. There are a lot of techie rules in it with the Mighty Destroyers, and you can do techie stuff with Brutes and Ardboys and all that, but this list just wants to smack face. That's very common of lists that run Kragnos, right? If you've got Kragnos, your plan is more aggressive. I want to point out the Madden monstrous trait on the Megaboss and Maw Crusher, just because I think it's a very fun ability that allows you to do mortal wounds, and if you kill enemy models, you get to keep doing mortal wounds. Very reminiscent of the Wargog Prophet, if anyone played against orcs or as orcs, specifically Big War during 3rd edition, but that's just a fun rule that I haven't seen many people run. I've more seen Biggin or Fasten, but my Madden is pretty cool as well. Any takes on Iron Jaws?
Sort of congratulations to Aaron for deciding to buy that many weird Brute Wreckers kits, because the Brute Rages and the Wreckers are the same kit. That's like a lot of the same kit. I don't know. It's silly. It's fun. Strikes me as the kind of list I'd play in like TTS, but like, God, good on him for taking it to a real tournament.
Yeah, and I will point out this tournament was a 1-day, 5-day tournament, a marathon.
It was an Iron Man.
Yeah, so
Oh God.
Congrats to going 5-0 across. Like, I guess
Maybe
when
yeah, maybe I wouldn't want to play something too cerebral, so
yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah. So yeah, I'll go through. I've got Brute Rages here. They've got Run in Charge. They get Strike First when they charge. So if you can get, and Kragnos gives them 3d6 charges, so you can get in a lot of Brute Rages very quickly, and they're all going to be activating one after the other, and doing. I've never felt Brute Rages do a ton of damage, but when you combine them with Iron Jaws Brawl, the battle formation, if you roll an 8+ to charge, you'll get an extra attack. And then also, if you call the War, you'll get an additional extra attack. So you can be 5 attacks each at damage 2. Which, when you have that many Brute Rages all going in like that, that's some serious damage. They're an incredibly squishy unit, but they can do a lot of damage in the right circumstances. Sorry. And then also the Weird Brute Wreckers, if they're also in combat, can get give out +1 to hit, which can help sort of offset their hitting on 4s. Have you got anything you want to say about Brute Rages?
Not really.
They're not a very complicated unit.
No, they're pretty simple, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, this list, while it might seem, I don't think this list is much of a turn 1 Alpha Strike. I do think you're more likely trying for a turn 2 or turn 3 Alpha Strike, or more accurately, I think you use Kragnos and the Brute Rages in this sort of as a package that will run around the board and like pick off targets, but not so much that it's going to slam straight into your entire opponent's army turn 1, but it'll pick off units and is very efficient at doing that. It's also got this is our next list, sorry. A Morgrunter Gouger, which can hand out Strike Last as well. So this list does have a lot of ways to cheat combat activations and like play with combat activation. So that's pretty cool. But we'll move on to our last list, which is a Seraphon list. It's a Thunderquake Star Host list. It's got the Lord of the Primal Jungles and Morbid Conjuration. It's got Lord Croak, a Bastildon with Arc of Sotek, another Bastildon with Arc of Sotek, 2 Bastildons with Solar Engine, a Skink Oracle on Troglodon, an Engine of the Gods, and 2 units of Hunter Swanchy with Dart Pipes, and finally a Skink Starsteer and the Realm Shaper Engine. Seraphon is in a weird spot where a lot of players are playing with these more weird, possibly considered spam lists, because the core of the book is not very strong and kind of uninteresting, but there are still some cool stuff you can do within Seraphon. Lord Croak can do a bunch of mortal wounds. We'll talk about him later. Same with the Arcs of Sotek, can also do decent sort of spread chip mortal wounds. You got Solar Engines for some shooting, an Oracle of Troglodon just to do stuff, and yeah, a bunch of other stuff. Engine of the Gods for a bit of healing as well. Have you got any takes?
Um. Uh. Yeah. Yeah. Seraphon is just sort of the weird, like, we gotta throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks army right now. Um. I've always liked Bastillodon, so it's cool to see them do well. Um. I think a lot of these are here because their points value is just ridiculous. Because like Seraphon, just like their battle traits are so like nothing burger that like this is all they got now, right? Is like the war scrolls that are way cheaper than they would be in any other army. Um, but yeah, just it's cool. I love Bastillodons. Two
Yeah.
up save, really neat as a thing that exists in the game.
Yeah, 14 health on a 2-up save is nothing to sniff at. The Engine of the Gods can heal it. Same with Lord of the Primal Jungles, has a spell that can also heal monsters, so you can just get a lot of healing in this list to keep these guys alive.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got the Bastildon Solar Engine here is the one that I'm going to point out. It's got the Solar Engine here, which has got 3 damage, 3 shots with crit 2 hits, which is really its big strength. Is just that's an okay shooting profile, and combined with all the other range damage you can do in this list, it adds up. And Tail Swipe for a bit of additional mortal wounds. Anything to say about it?
Um, I remember there was a point in the past in which the tail swipe was considered very effective. I think it was mostly because of the GHB rules at the time, sort of made taking the Arc of Sotex um like viable for a reason. But ultimately it's probably not what you're paying for. I think yeah, like you said, I think the source of this list is truly just get some heal auras onto these 2-up save 12 health guys and just sit there and watch your opponent flail around at you.
Yeah. Worth noting, these guys will be 14 health due to the battle formation giving them +2 to wound because they're monsters.
Yeah.
The Arc of Sotek has got an ability that allows them to pick 3 units within 9 inches and will do bad D3 to each of them. Combined with this other profiles. And finally, this list ends off with Lord Croak. It's a lot of different abilities here, but you're really looking at Celestial Deliverance. Can pick 3 enemy units within 18 and then do D3 mortals on them. And you can cast that spell more than once, and Croak is a multi-cast wizard. So you just cast that spell over and over and over again, doing mortal wounds, mortal wounds, mortal wounds. Croak was getting very popular at the end of the last General's Handbook, which I know was quite a while ago, but I think the obscuring changes really hurt him because it's much easier for your opponent to not be visible than it was back then. But Croak can still do good, and as seen in this list. Anything to say about Croak?
I think he's just adding to the whole like sort of grindhouse nature of this list of like I just do a bit of chip damage every single turn. I just hope that I'm doing a little bit more damage than I'm taking. and have enough time to score my stuff. The Hunters of Huanchi will add to that too. Very effective little scorers with their deep strikes and stuff. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of value in Quirk as well. That just from being able, he sort of he makes trying to use magic against him quite hard.
Yes.
So there's a certain amount of strength in that. There's some armies in this game that really need their spells. So, yeah, having +1 unbind is just really nice. It's quite a rare ability in the game these days.
Yeah. No, that's Croak. And that's Seraphon. You know, they're an army that is itching for a battle tome. Same with basically everyone that doesn't have one right now is really even like even ogres that are still doing well. I'm sure you would ask any ogres player and they'd be happy to get a battle tome right now. Like I think that some of the indexes are just getting a little long in the tooth, and Seraphon is one of them. But yeah, that's the episode for the week. We're in a bit of a holding pattern for the meta right now. I think it's new books have come out and it's really sort of churned up the meta, and I think we're seeing as players either adapt to these new armies or until they get nerfed before we'll see massive changes. I would be surprised if anyone other than Seraphon, DOK, or not Seraphon, sorry, Sylvaneth, DOK, or Lumineth are our top army for next week. But yeah, they're so strong, but other armies can still compete. And if your goal is to get a 4-1, I think almost any army in the game can do it. Or realistically, any army in the game can do it. And realistically, at a GT, going 3-2 is a great result. And that's the best that I've ever done. So you can do that with a lot of stuff. So, like, still go out there and have fun playing Age of Sigmar because I think the game is still in a decent spot, and it can get very disheartening to look at the meta and look at these top armies and be like, well, that's all the game is, and I'm not playing one of those armies, so there's no point. But there is still a point, and it's still fun, and these armies can still lose. They're not perfect. And if you're better as a player than them, then you will beat the army. It's not all down to my army's bad, it'll lose. There's a lot more nuance. And yeah, I think the game's just, we're on the cusp of a new General's Handbook, which will really hopefully shake up the meta, a battle scroll to come along with it. It's an exciting time to be playing Age of Sigmar. Cities of Sigmar just about to drop and hit tables. Cog forts are going to be a menace. I don't even think they're like too strong per se, but who doesn't want to run a cog fort? Like, everyone's going to be brewing up cog fort lists. If they're going to play them a lot, I don't know, but like I'm brewing them up for Iron Jaws, everyone's thinking about it, It's going to be very fun and very interesting. Got any words, Gigi?
Yeah, I just think we're in the calm before the storm. I think this city's book is going to be nuts once it hits the tabletop. It feels very similar to the Lumineth. And that just so many cool little shenanigans you can do, and I'm really excited to see what kind of stuff people brew out of it. And then we got a GHB in a month or two, kind of thing that should give. We have no idea how big it'll be. Like we could get rules for everyone. We could get just a few rules that is just going to completely shake up everything. New battle plans and new like battle tactics completely changes everything. It'll be a really really fun and interesting time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Tune in next week for the wrap up.